Hola, estudiantes. Today we are going to look at regular AR verbs. So before we do this, let's talk about infinitives and conjugations. So infinitives, remember that is the most basic form of the verb. In English, it has the word to in front of it. And they can be useful. I like to swim. I'm going to swim. So in both of those cases, we're using an infinitive. However, we need to use conjugations so that we know who is doing the action. In this sentence, he is swimming. Is my basic conjugated verb there. I speak English and Spanish. Speak is a conjugated verb. It's not I to speak, it's I speak. Do you play basketball? So in this case, do and play is part of a verb phrase. But we have all of these conjugated verbs. Even up here in these top two examples, I like to swim. Like is a conjugation. I'm going to swim. Again, we have a verb phrase, but am is really basically my conjugated verb there. So conjugations are important, and the main point of today is we're going to learn how to conjugate these verbs. So it's very, very important. It does keep us from sounding like a caveman, but if we don't know what the verbs mean, we can't communicate at all. So step number 1 is to go ahead and get those verbs memorized. You can make flashcards. There are plenty of websites out there that you can use to just practice these words. And also, I would say stay inside the box. There are a lot of irregular verbs in Spanish. So for now, keep it pretty simple. Stick to your vocabulary list. If you're in Voces, if you will open up your table of contents, go to chapter 5 and click on Lista de Vocabulario. That will take you here. Scroll down to where it starts talking about AR verbs. So those gray boxes there, those are the verbs that you want to memorize. So definitely work on those. So back to our notes on how to actually conjugate these. Also, we need to know our pronouns. So if you haven't gotten there yet, do that. So in English, to conjugate verbs, that means we are taking the infinitive, for example, to speak, and we know whether to use speak or speaks. For most verbs, I, we, they, and you will all go with one form of the verb, and then he, she, and it, typically you add an S to. That's how normal verbs work in English. So in Spanish, again, you have AR, ER, and IR verbs. So today we are talking about AR verbs, the ones that end in AR. If we go back to our vocab list, if you look at those words in the gray box, they all end in AR. So if we have an AR verb and it is a regular verb, this is what you're going to need to memorize next. You're going to change the ending of your verb. So for example, if your verb is hablar, again, first off, you need to know what that means. It's to speak. So now if I want to say I speak, I know that I is yo, and then I'm memorizing that O goes with yo. So I'm going to take off the AR, and that leaves me with my stem. Add that O on there, and hablar is to speak. Hablo means I speak, or I am speaking, I do speak. For my to conjugations, the ending is AS. So I know that you is to, take off my AR and replace it with AS, and hablas means you are speaking. Or maybe it's a question. ¿Hablas inglés? Do you speak English? Usted, él, ella, and remember there's no subject pronoun for it, but if you're saying you formally he or she, the ending is going to be an A. So back to my example with hablar. If I want to say he is speaking, for example, take off my AR, and then I'm just going to replace that with an A. So habla could mean you are speaking if it's formal, he is speaking, she is speaking, or it speaks. And then for nosotros, my new ending that I need to memorize is amos. So if I take off my AR, replace it with amos. Nosotros means we. Hablar is to speak. So hablamos means we speak. Vosotros, the ending is ais. So we're going to do the same thing here. Take off my AR, replace it with ais. Habláis would mean you all are speaking, informally in Spain. And then ustedes, ellos, and ellas all share an ending, an. So if I replace my AR with an, hablan could mean you all speak or they are speaking. So that's how all verbs work. So now let's take these endings and apply it to a few examples here. So the first one, he is swimming. So he is él. So we need to know our pronouns. And then we see on our chart, él goes with a. So we also need to know to swim. So if you go back to your vocabulary list, to swim is nadar. So we are going to take off the AR, and then he is an A. Put an A in its place. Él nada. He is swimming. And we don't have to have the L, but in this case, because a shares 3 separate pronouns, you are probably more likely to go ahead and use the pronoun there. All right, this next one, they are dancing. So they is my subject. They in Spanish is ellos, or maybe ellas. And then are dancing. To dance is bailar. So I'm going to take off my AR. Ellos is right here. It goes with an. So ellos bailan. They are dancing, or they dance. Now this next one is a question. So for questions, are you paying in cash? You is my subject. To pay is my verb. So let's figure that out first. So to pay is pagar. Now in this case, are is a helping verb. So with helping verbs, we don't actually have those in Spanish really in this case. So we're going to kind of pretend that are is not there, and we're going to conjugate pagar to go with you. Now remember, when you're asking questions, it's very common to put the subject after the verb. So we're going to deal with pagar first, but we need to be having in our mind that the conjugation is going to go with the pronoun to, because to is you. So we will put pagar first, but take off the AR. The ending that goes with to is as, so pagas tú en efectivo. So we just added a little extra something in there. Are you paying in cash? So pagas tú en efectivo. And again, you don't have to have the to. Up on that second example, you didn't have to have the ellos. For this next one, we speak Spanish. We is our subject. We know we is nosotros. To speak is hablar. So we're going to take off the AR. Nosotros goes with amos. So replace that in there. Nosotros hablamos. And then Spanish is español. All right, last example. I am wearing a white shirt and gray tennis shoes. So we're putting a whole lot of information together, stuff that we have learned from this chapter and previous chapters. So first things first, our subject, I. So we know that I is yo. Am wearing is my verb phrase. To wear is llevar. So I'm going to take off my AR. Yo goes with O. So llevo. Now a white shirt. We're making things complicated here. Remember, colors are adjectives, and adjectives typically go after the noun. So we need to know that a shirt is a camisa. Camisa is feminine and singular, so that affects a and white. So the word for a that's feminine and singular is una. I am wearing a. And then the word for white is blanco, but camisa is feminine, so I need to change that O to an A. And then the word and, E, gray tennis shoes. So tennis shoes are tenis. And remember, gray is going to go after tenis. And then the word for gray is gris. Now, if I said tenis gris, that's just like saying one gray tennis shoe. So I need to change gris and make it plural. So even though that already ends in an S, it's a consonant. So to make things plural that end in consonants, we just add es. So tenis grises.